much relevant. Try to pick little points. But ceramics has a lot of applications. So it is, subject is useful. If I am what I am telling, the method, I don't know whether you will follow it or not, because we are not regular teachers. We like teaching but not regular teachers. Yesterday, because of the time, or I went a little slow, I could not complete 60-65% of the first part only I completed. So what I don't want to leave halfway. So I shifted some slides into the, that's what the first slide is same as yesterday. First 10 minutes I will cover the part of the remaining part I left. Then today's also I will compressed. I will try to complete in 1 hour or so. So we have seen yesterday that ceramics are traditional and advanced. Traditional ceramics are clay-based aluminosilicates. Advanced ceramics are non-metallic, inorganic materials. Oxides or non-oxides. Traditionally, ceramic materials or products are made by mixing clay materials with water or with some additives, paste form, then make it a mass, then shaping in hand or some machines, then made into heated, dried and then heated at high temperature in using kilns or furnaces called sintering or fire. It will get a dense body. Advanced ceramics also we do, it follows 4 steps. Advanced ceramics: fabrication, synthesis, processing, shaping, processing and shaping, sintering, and then machining and evaluation. So synthesis, we require the powder material, raw material, either from the minerals by crushing or making it fine tuning or chemically purifying, removing the impurities. Yesterday someone was asking. You have to remove the chemical impurities, then process it, or by using the chemistry. Basic chemistry will be used to synthesize raw materials in micron, submicron or nano powder sizes. Various methods: one is solid state method, liquid phase method, gas phase method. There are various variants are there. If you look into basic, maybe material science book, if not in chemistry, material science, for your projects or in future, it's better to see little bit of material science. Basic is chemistry, very much required wherever you go. It's a good subject. Then material science book, the solid state method, liquid phase method or gas phase method. Then some of the variant method. Under that solid state, a simple method, easy method. Most researchers in universities follow that. Even now in NAL we follow solid state method to make required components. Whatever maybe Dr. Ramesh was speaking about electrical or battery materials or biomaterials. There also the solid state chemistry is used. Then we have discussed about that. Hydroxyapatite or calcium phosphate, which has particular application in biomedical field or biomedical industry. Then we have looked into same hydroxyapatite synthesis by precipitation method, mixing 2 components, changing the pH of the medium, we get the fine precipitation. Then all variants, we can change the composition, we can composite, we can make. Next slide. Now we have practiced this technique called solution combustion synthesis. This has been invented by Professor K.C. Patil and his students long before, maybe 20 years before in IISc. It is nothing but an oxidation reduction reaction between the oxidizer and reducer. Reducer is generally an organic fuel. It is also called as fuel. It's a fuel chemistry like urea, glycine and other hydroxides, etc. Many fuels are there. Urea is generally used if you see solution combustion synthesis of alumina, zirconia. If you see a paper, then urea they use or glycine they use. Sucrose also used. And nitrates, metal nitrates act as oxidizers, but it produces the oxygen by decomposition. So I have removed some of the slides. So initially we mix nitrate and the urea in a beaker. It's a simple beaker chemistry is called. Then when the nitrate decomposes and reducer decomposes, oxidation reduction reaction takes place, and a metal nitrate, because of generally this oxidation reduction reaction is an exothermic reaction, or it can be endothermic, but for getting the product, it should be, we should match the conditions such that it gives a extra play or extra energy, exothermic energy, which will result in the formation of fine crystalline product, oxide materials, metal oxides. Reaction solution in a just muffle heater. This they do in a furnace, big furnace. Inside the furnace at 500 degree they keep and close it. Lot of gas molecules will come out. But we have tried with the open beaker, open condition like this, and we could produce various materials. Next slide. We tried alumina, zirconia, calcium phosphate, ceria, etc. Here the principle behind it is stoichiometry is calculated based on the oxidation state. You will know very well about chemistry, aluminium 3 plus 3, zirconium, cerium, yttrium, etc. Yttrium is used as a dopant in zirconium. Aluminium nitrate, pure aluminium nitrate is a good ceramic, but zirconium nitrate as a pure condition, ZrO2, it will become a monoclinic phase. To stabilize in the tetragonal phase, high temperature phase, tetragonal phase, to stabilize at room temperature, some of the dopants like yttrium oxide, calcium oxide are required. Then ceria is another important ceramic material. Ceria also doped with zirconia. So here I have just given the oxidation state of this aluminum nitrate, etc. Also yttrium nitrate, urea, glycine as examples of fuels. Here two reactions I have written. For optimum oxidation reduction or combustion reaction, generally the ratio between oxidizer and reducer should be 1. If it is less than 1, it is a fuel lean reaction. If it is more than 1, fuel rich reaction. But in some cases, it will be an endothermic reaction. So we have to use, or the urea stoichiometrically calculated may not be sufficient. Then we have to use another, ammonium nitrate is generally used as additional fuel. Next slide. So the enthalpy of combustion has to be calculated. So when we calculate the enthalpy of combustion of the particular reaction like aluminum nitrate plus urea giving the alumina, etc. The other carbon dioxide, oxides of nitrogen are the gas molecules which are coming out and which produces a porous structure in the body. That will result in a porous mass having fine particles. So submicron and even up to nano level, but not up to 5 nano, 10 nano, maybe around 50 nanometers easily one can get with this method. But it is one part synthesis, one step reaction to give the required crystalline phase. So enthalpy of reaction, a particular case of urea with the zirconia, here it is an endothermic reaction at when we take the ratio 1. So we have to use 1.1% or 1.2 ratio of the 1.1, 1.15 like that. Then it will become the exothermic reaction. If you take glycine, it will be particular. This only I have put because this is a specific case. Not all, most of the cases it will be positive only, exothermic only. So enthalpy of combustion reaction may be positive or negative depending upon the type of fuel and percentage of fuel. Next. So here the result, I am not going to the details. The result of one of the result of our study, effect of fuel on phase and particle size to synthesize zirconium oxide. We have studied this one. We use urea and glycine independently as well as the combination of the two at different proportions. How it gives the product and what are calculated the exothermic delta H also enthalpy, and one more adiabatic temperature also we can calculate using the specific heat of the materials that I have not put the graph. So what is the temperature of that flame we can calculate theoretically, and then you can measure also using a thermocouple inside the furnace. The setup should be there. And finally, with this study, when we use nitrate, that is zirconium nitrate and urea, the crystallite size of the particles, the left most, is about 30 to 70 nanometers, and particle size is 80 to 150 nanometers. You may have it, you know about, I think, crystallite size. From XRD, we can find out the crystallite size using a Scherer formula. with some approximations. That will give the size of the crystal. In one particle there may be more crystals. In one thing, individual particles, one round here, it shows that there will be around 2 or 3 crystals or more also sometimes. That is, particle size is one grain, one particle here. But within the one particle there will be more of number of crystals. Crystallite size calculated with some approximation from X-ray diffraction data. This particle size is measured by other equipments also, and SCM also. We can calculate here number of some 5-6 grains and then average out. So when we use urea alone, slightly bigger particle size. When we use little excess of urea, then when we use glycine or nitrate plus glycine, we get still finer and more uniform particles here, and size is, crystallite size is 15 to 25 nanometers, particle size is 40 to 80 nanometers. Next. This is the summary of the zirconia, synthesis of ceria and yttria doped zirconia, but it is specifically to yttria doped zirconia. So we could prepare about 50 gram batch of powder. This 50 grams in 5 liters. 5 liter beaker, 50 gram powder will fill, because that much of porous structure. It's a loose compact of the powder. To get the actual powder, we have to crush it. So because of the oxides of nitrogen and carbon, that will lot of gases are coming out in the reaction, combustion reaction. That's why this porous structure is produced. 2 liter beaker 200 gram full and 5 liter beaker 500 gram full. Then this is the final result of the what powder we could achieve. In the laboratory, most of the people use 2 gram or maximum 5 gram, maximum 7 grams. It is difficult to scale up. That is one limitation here. But we in the lab only, we have gone up to 50 grams and some of the materials up to 100, 200 grams also. Then intended applications of zirconia, just for your knowledge. Zirconia is well-known ceramic material, has wide applications from biomedical applications, dental and medical. Dental crowns, now ceramic crowns are coming, that is made of zirconium oxide. They make the block and machine it, and then since the partially sinter, they machine, then the sinter, they make the crowns. Otherwise it was composite material or acrylic material. And nano dispersion, these fine nanoparticles are used as a dispersion in another material. For example, alumina if you disperse about 5%, 10% of zirconia in alumina matrix, it will increase the toughness of the material, generally strength of the material. Then electrolyte for SOFC, solid oxide fuel cells, batteries you have studied yesterday, fuel cells he was mentioning, where it is used as an electrolyte, zirconia solid electrolyte. He was explaining about solid electrolytes, movement of ions, external movement of electrons. So zirconia is used as a solid electrolyte. Then this is also used as a tough material or for high temperature or mechanical applications. Surface coating or thermal barrier coating, yesterday I was mentioning, for a metallic engine components to withstand high temperature or corrosion resistance, it has to be coated with a ceramic material. Zirconia is one of the well-known thermal barrier coating materials. Then sensors, zirconia also used as gas sensors. Zirconia and zirconia ceria composites are used as gas sensors, pressure sensors. Okay, next slide. That is about solution combustion synthesis. Briefly, the method, preparation of zirconia I have mentioned. Now another method of preparing ceramic. This is for silicon nitride. To prepare silicon nitride, this is one of the methods. Start from silicon, a metal powder, make it in the powder form or make some shape, blocks or any shape. The shaping methods we are going to discuss later. So we make the particular required shape. Here I have shown the shapes, different shapes made by our laboratory, our work only. Then that shape, either powder or put inside a furnace, but in the nitrogen gas environment. High purity nitrogen is required. Then in the temperature range 1200 to 1400 degrees centigrade, the silicon will get nitrided. It becomes silicon nitride. Solid gas reaction. It can be solid gas, liquid gas or gas also. So various mechanisms are there. But major we call it as solid gas reaction because starting material is silicon, solid. So this work I have done a part of my long before. I am not done now. Maybe later we will plan to start once again for some other applications. For silicon nitrate, this is one of the first method to make silicon nitrate, and here 66% weight gain and 22% volume increase will be there. Silicon when converted into silicon nitrate, the density will increase, the volume shrinkage will be there. Volume shrinkage actually, not the increase will be there because it will take up nitrogen, and density will increase from 2.2 to 3.2, increase in the weight, increase in the volume because of nitrogen is going there. So because of that, if you make this shape in the room temperature, then when you nitrate it will not shrink. Yesterday one of you among you were asking about shrinkage in ceramics after the class, after the lecture. So generally there will be shrinkage in ceramics when we heat it, but here the shrinkage will overcome by this increase in weight. So this is called almost near net shaped product or near net shaping method. Okay, next. So here one little of chemistry or thermodynamics we can call, I am not going detail. The nitridation, this is called nitridation, silicon to silicon nitride by adding nitrogen, nitridation. Nitridation reaction is affected by the partial pressure of nitrogen, oxygen, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, silica or carbon present in the furnace. Inside the furnace, high purity nitrogen is required. If the partial pressure, even very minute amount, ppm level of oxygen will affect this reaction, because this is controlled by the phase diagram between silicon, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen phase stability diagram. Here the phase stability diagram is given at two partial pressures. One is partial pressure of carbon activity 1, carbon activity 10 power minus 4. The dotted lines is carbon activity of 10 power minus 4. That is, at lower nitrogen partial pressure also, silicon oxynitrate or silicon nitrate is stable. Otherwise, if carbon activity is more, beta silicon carbide will form. Because carbon is there, the reaction between carbon and silicon will take place, silicon carbide will form unless we have a good control over the atmosphere inside the furnace. And in fact, while we are doing the silicon nitride formation, we got silicon carbide, then we gone into more detail about theory or published papers. This one person by Wada, W-A-D-A, not our Uddin Wada et al. 1998 has given, this is not my, he has predicted this one. So we referred to this and explained our research with respect to this one. So we also published in 1996 this research. So various mechanisms will be there, will take place to form this product. Next slide. Using this same silicon to silicon nitrate, nitridation phenomena, different products are made called silicon carbide bonded silicon nitrate or nitrate bonded silicon carbide. Silicon nitrate and silicon carbide, composite. It is called nitrate bonded silicon carbide. Silicon carbide, initially instead of taking fully silicon, we take silicon carbide plus silicon together. So what happens, silicon will convert into silicon nitrate. So when silicon carbide will remain as it is, so silicon nitrate bonded silicon carbide. And if you take silicon nitrate in the beginning, partially, say 50% silicon, then silicon nitrate and silicon nitrate bonding will take place. You may ask the advantage, here the property of silicon carbide will be there, more refractoriness will be there, and here the shrinkage will be minimized, and the density of the final silicon nitrate product will be better in this case. For some applications, or it's another route to make the composite or the self-bonded, this is also called as self-bonded silicon nitrate. Some more detail we have to go to that, not required now. But the basic principle from silicon to silicon nitrate, reaction bonded silicon nitrate, silicon to silicon carbide will give reaction nitrate bonded silicon carbide, and silicon nitrate plus silicon if you take, it will become nitrate bonded nitrate. Next slide. Only 2 slides I covered, I reduced that, about that. This is actually not my work, I have not worked on hydrothermal. I mentioned about hydrothermal synthesis, one method. I am trying to explore different methods, at least some of the methods to make different materials. It has advantages, disadvantages, limitations for some materials that you can go detail when you require into the literature. But hydrothermal means this is the reaction in presence of water with the application of both pressure and temperature. What is the principle used in your pressure cooker, rice cooker or idli cooker also? Will it have same? The pressure is increased. When the pressure is increased, boiling point of water comes down. It lowers the boiling point. So at lower boiling point it boils faster and the cooking will be faster. It's the basic principle is same in hydrothermal reaction. Inside the cavity there will be water. Other solvents also people use, but generally it's hydrothermal, that's why. Or it has to be called solvothermal. The hydrothermal, water and pressure will be there. So application of pressure and temperature. So the reaction temperature will be decreased when the pressure is high. So this is most people are using for different materials, oxide materials and composite. This one example of preparing cerium nitrate into ceria. From cerium nitrate, from atmospheric oxygen it will take and ceria, CeO2 will be formed. And here ammonia, first what they did was they precipitated cerium nitrate, ceria from cerium nitrate first, like hydroxyapatite precipitation. Cerium nitrate solution and then added ammonia drop by drop. Cerium hydroxide will precipitate first, then that will get oxidized to cerium oxide. And maybe in the amorphous state or very nanocrystalline state, nanocrystalline state. That when we calcine to high temperature it will form CeO2, pure CeO2 without NH2O, etc. So that powder precipitated first, then put into a chamber, hydrothermal chamber, then precipitation at autoclaved at 120 degrees centigrade, and another batch they did at 180 degrees centigrade with slight difference in the other additives also. The result is, next slide. Result is they could achieve nano rods and nano cubes of ceria in this morphology, and here only cubes, and this is the as precipitated nearly spherical particles, spheres of ceria. So when you treat it under pressure and temperature at a particular condition, the crystal growth, the growth of the crystals will take place in one particular direction, particular facets, 200, 100, 111, like that. So we will get different morphology crystals. This well known in the hydrothermal chemistry, people use it. But in this study, what is the use? The nano, they found for two different applications. One is for glass polishing and another for catalytic activity, burning of soot or carbon. In the engine, diesel engine, carbon soot is the byproduct that has to be burnt. So to burn that carbon or soot, this ceria is used as a catalyst. So catalytic activity of the ceria is tested by these three powders as well as the powders obtained by commercially from the company. So they found this nano rods and cubes mixture, this morphology, this material will have a higher rate of active sites and having higher oxygen capacity. They are more efficient for combustion. Because of these nano structures, the oxygen capacity higher, more oxygen storage capacity here supposed to be is higher for these structures. And similarly, rod and cube has higher hydrophilicity because of cerium 3+ and its dipolar surfaces, that is the best polishing agent compared to other two, or spherical particles or cube alone. This recently I reviewed one PhD from that student I have taken because I found this very interesting. She has worked only for ceria for different applications. 2 chapters on this and one chapter on this, one chapter on this, one chapter on synthesis, and one more chapter on magnetic nanofluids. So I have taken just 2 slides, thought that this is interesting recent work also, and this is the hydrothermal area. I am not working, so I thought I will present brief. Next. Okay, this much slides I have shifted from 23 slides I made 10 slides from yesterday. I reduced it, and today this topic. Now we have seen about the different synthetic methods, how to synthesize powders, maybe solid state, gas phase, liquid phase, combustion, or reactive combustion like that, or hydrothermal. Now, how to make a product? The second step is to make the shape. So during the shaping, we have some chemistry again. Synthesis we have some chemistry. The processing also we have some basic chemistry. What we study in, even in fact maybe degree classes, need not be MSc. So role of chemistry in processing of advanced ceramics. Next slide. Here I will, again like yesterday, I will touch upon different fabrication methods, shaping techniques. Then that is called colloidal processing. The chemistry involved in processing the advanced ceramics is the colloidal processing, some of the phenomena there, then conclusions. Next. So this slide is a repetition of yesterday. We know for fabrication of ceramics, we have to go through the powder and process it and make green body, then sinter. I have shown you yesterday this slide. We have talked something about powder preparation. Now we will go to the second step, processing and shaping. Next step. Before going to the chemistry of that, I will just brief upon what are the different methods, at least some of the methods available to make ceramic shapes. Yesterday we have seen the clay pot making, that's traditionally used. Another traditional or well established technique is called uniaxial pressing. You know the tablets of pharmaceutical tablets. Here also it must be some of the at least chemistry or physics people, maybe I think they are doing. Some pellets, they call it as pellets. It is made by using a uniaxial pressing method. Here I have shown you a small press what we have in our laboratory. We also have the other groups, in my group, other groups big high capacity presses. It is called uniaxial press or UTM machines, the same principle. Here the principle is the powder is mixed with some ceramic powder is mixed with some organic binder, maybe 1 to 3%. Generally PVA, polyvinyl alcohol. Mix the powder with the polyvinyl alcohol, make a paste form, and then dry it partially and make a powder form. Powder, it is not individual powder. Initially it will be individual powder like this as shown in the below of the slide, the bottommost. It will be granules, some few particles together like one granule. Similar granules, because the particles are coated with PVA, polyvinyl alcohol, and they bind together, it will be one granules. About 50 microns or 100 microns. The initial particle size may be around 1 micron, 2 micron, 3 micron. But when you mix with the PVA acts as a binder and granules will form. That granules we require amount and put inside the die. This shows the die here. And inside space, the green is the powder or the granule we have put here, ceramic with the polymer, and then it is compressed. It is called compaction. And then when it is compacted, the organic will act as a plasticizer. It will flow in between the particles and it will bind. It's a binder. Bind the particles. Otherwise, these inorganic materials are inert. They will not bond together. When you press, very high pressure is required to bond it, or still physical force is not sufficient. You have to heat it. Chemical bonding, it has to take place. So this organic it acts as a binder. So then you eject out the top portion, that is the die portion, and you get the pellet. So from the powder we get the pellet. That has to be taken into the furnace, kept in the furnace, initially slow heating to remove that PVA. PVA we are just using as the initial binder, afterwards it will go. Around 500, 400, 600 degrees centigrade we heat it for half an hour, 1 hour, 2 hours depending on the quantity. The PVA will burn off, then only ceramic pellet will be there. Then when you take it to high temperature of 1300, 1400 degrees centigrade or 1600 degrees centigrade, that will get densified. So that we get the product. So this is the one of the next slide. This is one of the simplest method to make some simple shapes. So here the main point is the pressure, uniaxial pressing. Uni means one axial pressing. The pressure is applied in one direction. Other features are there, need not worry. One direction pressure is applied. This is another die and the powder and the plunger. They fill the die with the powder and put this plunger and put it to that machine and apply the load. It will press around 20 kilonewtons or 25 kilonewtons, 50 kilonewtons like that. Maybe 50 MPa, 100 MPa like that. Then, so this pellet, simple pellet made with alumina as one of the small project made by a BSc student. Just example. From here only, to St. Clements College, he has come as a project, 1 month project. He has done very systematic work, simple work study. And these are from the literature. Some of the shapes can be made by this method. Next slide. Another method is called isostatic pressing. As the name indicates, the difference between the previous one is a uniaxial pressing. Here isostatic, from all directions pressure is applied. The pressure applied isostatically from all sides in the range of maybe 30 to 140 MPa about that. Then here also, how pressure is applied? Here it is a rubber mold. A mold. Initially it was a steel die, but it is a rubber bag. Inside that rubber bag, similar type of powder with the ceramic powder with the binder is added. Then pressure is applied from all sides. The pressurizing medium may be water or oil or glycerin used in this blue colored one. Pressurizing medium, rubber bag, inside the powder is there. The pump is a schematic shown here. So here the pressure is applied from all directions so that uniform density will be obtained. When you inertial press only pressure from one side, the other side there will not be, so density may vary. Big components cannot be done or little complicated components cannot be done. Here it can be done. Next. These are some of the shapes made by this method. Here you can see the white color with the rubber bag, a tubular or rod shaped structure can be made. Here the leftmost thing shows the rubber bags or molds used with the die. This is the steel die master, and from the master you make the mold. Into the mold you put the powder and press it, you get the shape. And these are right extreme is some of the shapes made by this method. What they do, they make the shape solid and then sometimes they machine it because it contains polyvinyl alcohol or polypyrrolidone, PVP I think, polyvinyl pyrrolidone as a binder. So it obtains by machining also possible before the sintering. And here one example I have shown in the dentistry, dental surgeons are using this for making the crowns. As I mentioned, zirconia. This is the block obtained from the company. It's a standard available. How this is made? By using this isopressing and machining. They press the zirconia powder with the binder and machine it into this form. Then they will supply to the surgeon or the technicians who will machine according to the shape and size or contour of the tooth. The dentist will take the X-ray will be data will be transferred into the machine, CNC machine or numerically controlled machining. So that this machining of this is the negative after machining. The crowns of this dental is here, tooth crowns. So this one of the what I want to show here. The application of zirconia, a ceramic material, and the application of isostatic pressing, the technique to make the products. Next. Another method is called extrusion. How these pipes are made. Generally pipe or long axis tubes are made by process called extrusion. The mass is put into a die. Here it is shown here in the top right, two figures, different versions of that. The material is put inside the die and applied pressure from the other side. Here the die nozzle, if the nozzle size is 3 mm, then you will get a 3 mm rod. If it is 5 mm, 5 mm rod. Or if there is a special die to make a tubular version. Plastic pipes are made by these methods. All plastic pipes for electrical cables or water pipes, etc. made by extrusion process. Ceramics also, they apply this methodology can be applied to ceramics to make longer shaped structures like this. And this is the honeycomb structure. This yesterday I was mentioning BHEL. BHEL they did a lot of work on extrusion of this type of structures for diesel soot removal or in the catalytic applications. And they transferred the technology, also other company, and in some BTMS buses, this has been installed, it is working. Still research is going on. And this catalytic, there are two types of ceramic materials. But here, what I want to say is the extrusion principle is used to make this type of shapes. Next. Another is injection molding. Definitely you would have heard about injection molding. Through injection molding, we can make a complicated shapes, very complicated shapes as shown in the bottom of this slide. These are I have not made, or we are not working on this. All the methods one can't adopt, you can't become get experience in that. Extrusion to some extent in NAL, my colleague was working, I am not involved in that, not extensively, little bit. But this injection molding we are not working. We had a plan, but we have not done it. So here what happens is extrusion, material will come out of the die like a rod. But here the die will be there, the complex shape will be there. The material is in the plastic form, it will be injected and forced into the die. There it will get cooled down. The ceramics, what they do, both extrusion and injection molding, ceramic materials are mixed with some plasticizer. In the pressing, we mix it about 2 to 3%, but here about 10 to 15% or 20% of polymer is added. Because it has to be melted at low temperature, it is a plastic mass. It will be melted around 300, 400 degrees and injected into the die. There it will get cooled down. So the product will be initially, it contains also about 10% or 15% of a plastic mass. That has to be slowly removed by putting inside a furnace, and it is called binder burnout stage. That binder has to be burnt out slowly. 1 or 2%, not much problem. But 15-20%, if you heat it fast, all the polymer will melt and this will settle down. Will not get the shape. Shape will not retain. So that is another science is involved there, science and engineering. So this is another method to make complicated shapes. Next. Now coming to, these are all first two, die pressing and uniaxial pressing we call it dry methods. Then extrusion and injection molding are called plastic forming methods. And now I come to wet processing methods. Yesterday I was mentioning about slip casting to make a complicated shapes like sanitary ware or teacups are made by slip casting. This is the method or process to make such shapes by using a method called slip casting. Here what we do, the powder, fine powder, same alumina or zirconia powder mixed with water. And as like yesterday I was showing about milling the powder, reducing the size. But here a homogeneous mix between the water and the powder is to be obtained by milling in the rotary mill, ball mill for a few hours. Then that we call it a slurry or slip. About 25 ml of water can take from 75 grams up to 125 grams depending upon the material, powder, different materials, conditions, etc. So unless we process it properly, we will not get that. Higher percentage of powder put into a same amount of liquid, the density will be higher. So when we make the product, it will have a better properties. So how we make this slip, the liquid here, the slurry, like a dosa dough, it will be like, looks like a dosa or free flowing milk, thick milk, a slurry, well flowing. That will be poured into a mold. This in the bottom, it is the mold, and here the second picture, the person is pouring the slurry into the mold. These molds are made by plaster of Paris. It is called plaster of Paris. It is a plaster. Calcium, what is calcium plaster? Is calcium sulfate hemihydrate. That is reacted into, next slide I will explain you that. It will convert into a gypsum when we make the mold, or calcium sulfate dihydrate. These molds will have a fine pores in that, micropores. This water medium, a powder in water, when we pour into this, water is absorbed by the mold by capillary action. Micropores will absorb the water by capillary action. So we get, after removal of water, we get the shapes like this. The powder will adhere to the walls of the mold, so we get the cup shape, whatever we want. Then that is released, mold releasing. So there are 4 stages, we can say, even slip casting. One is the ceramic powder mixed with the DI water or distilled water and with some dispersant, I will explain later, pH adjustment, etc. Then ball milling, then mold preparation, then casting into mold, then releasing, mold release and drying. After drying, This has to be heated to high temperature, required temperature to get the strength. So slip casting process is this. Next slide. In that slip casting we require a mold. How to make the mold? Mold is generally made of, mold should be a porous mold, about 40% porosity should be there because it has to remove the water. So mold is nothing but a negative replica of the product. If you want a cup shape or a bar shape like this, you have a mold like this, two-piece mold. Inside that cavity will be there. Then you pour the material there, we get the rectangular bar. Or if you to make a disc shape like the second, you have to have a mold like this. To make this cup shaped structure, we require this complicated shapes. 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces of mold. Or nozzle shape like this to make that this is the mold. So this is mold negative replica, and model of the piece to be cast, that is the master, is made with aluminium, resin or wood. Then plaster of Paris powder we get in the industry bags or dental labs, they apply use plaster. Purity or some composition will be slightly different, but same plaster of Paris. It is called plaster of Paris calcium sulfate hemihydrate, partially hydrated. That will take and mix it with water and poured around this mold. We get this mold. Next slide please. So we get this when we pour the plaster, that is calcium sulfate hemihydrate, that will react with the water. Partially hydrolyzed sulfates, 2 CaSO4 half H2O, 2 molecules of CaSO4 half H2O plus 3 water molecules will form 2 CaSO4 2 H2O, which is a slightly exothermic reaction with 3900 calories per mole of DPC. This becomes a hard mass like this. Initially, we pour the slurry, that is powder, like it looks like a idli dough. Idli hiಟ್ಟು thick ಆಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ thin. ಅದನ್ನು pour ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ that will become self-reacting, self-setting. Like cement is setting, this is also, it is called a setting reaction. Nothing but this is a setting reaction. Just water is the reaction medium to make it set into a hard mass. The hemihydrate will convert into dihydrate, and hemihydrate is called plaster of Paris, and the product is called gypsum. So we get the molds like this. Next. These are some of the shapes and molds made by in our laboratory. And here I am showing you some of the shapes made by slip casting. This slide is not by us, it is from the internet or from literature. Just to show that these are the shapes, very big shapes are made by using slip casting method. This is applicable to complicated as well as very large parts, and very old and cost effective technique useful to mass production. Next slide. Here I am showing some of the shapes made by different materials in our research activity in our department. Silicon carbide, in fact I worked initially to making slip casting of silicon carbide to make this type of cups, and this as a R&D we did. Then nitride, bonded nitride, I have shown this figure already. Then silica, SiO2. SiO2 we started working for ceramic radome project. Then zircon means zirconium silicate, ZrSiO4, as a R&D we did. Then alumina, latest part we did some work on alumina, and this ball shape, this is actually the piece, two piece joined together, it is not single piece. Half semi sphere we made, because one single sphere it is not possible or difficult to make by slip casting method, is hollow. Next slide. Here I am showing the particular components. It is also there in the bulk, but this component is my first, I am happy to say that very long back, my first work, I worked on making this carbide, silicon carbide cup from silicon carbide powder by slip casting method. First R&D work, this was for HAL, Hindustan Aeronautic Limited, slip casting of silicon carbide. As a R&D we tried to develop this, but we have discontinued that. This complicated, very complicated. Silicon nitride, and again actually going into the engine, this component is still in India they are not using. Foreign countries they tried, but lot of limitations because of ceramic brittle nature. And this is the radome. Radome is nothing but dome for antenna in a radar. This, the property required, various property, one rain erosion property, then another is the electromagnetic transparent material. It should be electromagnetic transparent, Yesterday I have shown some of the shapes that are made of composite material, means fiber composites. Fiber composites means glass fiber reinforced with plastic resins, not ceramic. For high temperature applications, ceramic radums are the material, ceramics are the material. So this made of silica, the best materials are silica and silicon nitride. We have a proposal to work on again on this radom projects, specifically from silicon nitride. I don't know whether it will come or we have to do it. It's not easy work, hard work. Next. So now I have from dry pressing, plastic forming, wet forming. I concentrate on wet forming because my work also, and it has advantages of making the complicated shapes. But what happens is, one of the culprit or the defect in this problem is the fine powder particles. When we put into a liquid medium, polar liquid medium like water, or even in moisture environment, they will get absorbed, means attracted towards each other because of physical force of attraction called van der Waals force of attraction that we have studied. The fine particles will have a physical force of attraction, van der Waals force of attraction. Because of this phenomena, the particles will get agglomerated. It is called agglomeration. Particles will come together, lumps, maida hecto. When you put into this one, that becomes a lumps. That is getting joining together. It is not dispersing in the liquid medium. So here the physical force of attraction called van der Waals force is responsible for this agglomeration. The particles are lumps, clusters. It becomes a cluster. This is a culprit. If we have this type of structure, the inhomogeneity will be there in the body, and that will result in non-uniform shrinkage or densification while sintering. So cracks may produce, or some of the pores inside it may be retained after sintering. So we will not get the good product. A microstructure is very important because uniform microstructure is required. Just for example, these tiles uniformly put how it looks, and it will give a best result property. If it is randomly distributed, that will not look nice also, that will not give a good product or good property. So these particles should be dispersed in the liquid medium uniformly. There is no attachment between the particles, should not be, to have a best product. So most forming methods like slip casting and other methods, tape casting, gel casting, etc. also goes through a liquid medium and slip or slurry is formed. So agglomeration of the particles due to interparticle van der Waals attractive forces, these are the potential flaws. Density or size of these particles are very important, that has to be controlled or removed. So particles should be separated like this, where to get well homogeneous microstructure. How we can get it? Now next slide. Yeah. In the fine particles, we talk about interparticle forces. When we put the particles into a liquid medium, what are the forces acting on the surface of the particles or between the particles? One is van der Waals force of attraction, that we have already mentioned about that. This is the physical force of attraction, and this van der Waals force of attraction or the attract energy VA is given by AR by 12D square. A is a constant and calculated based on the polarizability of the materials or density, material and number densities of the atoms in the bodies. That is, it is the material property characteristic. Ceramic materials generally will have this Hanker constant, high value 1 to 11. So high value of Hanker constant, high is the attractive energy. Ceramics are prone to agglomerate in the liquid medium, water medium. So one surface interparticle force is the van der Waals force. Next slide. When we put this into a liquid medium, another phenomena occurs. The particles will get oxidized, or aluminum oxide when you put into water, or silica SiO2 put into water, it will get hydrolyzed like this. MOH, M represents a metal here, M represents metal, maybe aluminum, silicon, zirconium, whatever it is. It will become MOH. Depending upon the pH of the medium, this will convert into surface charges are developed on the surface, MOH plus or MO minus. So when we put this alumina or zirconia or ceramic powder into the liquid medium, water medium, they will get surface oxidized, surface charged, either positive or negative depending on the acidic pH of the medium. So these charges, if the surface is charged, then there is a repulsion between the charges, negative charges will repel. So this will give a repulsive force between the particles. We have van der Waals force of attraction and repulsive force. These forces are called electrostatic repulsion. The net surface charges is controlled by pH of the medium, either acidic or basic. Next slide. So these surface charges will have a repulsion. So one repulsive force, attractive force. Now due to how further little theory about repulsive force is, the oppositely charged ions or particles. In our case it is a particle, alumina, nano-sized or submicron particles put into a medium, surface charged. Oppositely charged, they will repel each other. Uniformly charged particle will repel each other, but negatively charged particle will attract positively charged particles. So there is adsorption of oppositely charged particle on the surface of the charged particle, and the charge is neutralized, but not neutralized completely by the absorbed particles. The effect of this charge neutralization will extend up to a certain particular distance in the remaining part of the medium. The remaining part of the medium is called diffuse layer. So totally this charged particle, adsorbed particle, oppositely charged particle, and the diffuse layer means the thickness of this layer up to which the effect of this charged particle is there. It is together called double layer or electrical double layer. This subject is there in your electrochemistry. Which year I don't know. I also studied in, but at that time not studied at all. Afterwards I read. So you study. Nernst equation is there, no? It is related to this. Electrical double layer is there. Surface potential or Stern potential, that word is there, Stern potential. Okay, so this surface charge, I talk about repulsive energy. Because of this positive charges, there will be a repulsion. So it is a repulsive force. This repulsive force is given by this equation Vr equal to pi r epsilon zeta squared exponential minus kd, where r is the particle radius, epsilon is the dielectric constant of the medium, and k is the function of the ionic composition or ionic strength. Higher the ionic strength, lower will be this effect or thickness of the double layer. D is the particle separation. Zeta is the zeta potential, that is the potential at the slipping plane of the adsorbed layer, or for common thing we can say potential difference between the adsorbed layer and the remaining part of the liquid medium. A slight difference will be surface potential, streaming potential, Stern potential and zeta potential, but for practical purposes we can't measure the surface potential, we have to calculate or measure the zeta potential. Potential at the surface of the adsorbed layer. So there is a repulsive energy. Next. So one theory called DLVO theory for the stability of this micron or submicron or nano particles called colloidal particles in a dispersed medium. It is called DLVO theory. So for the stability, the particles should not be, when you are into a liquid medium, it should not get agglomerate or it should not fall down. It should be stable under suspension. For that, there should be a combination of balancing between the attractive force and repulsive force. The stability is obtained depending upon the balancing between the van der Waals attraction force and the repulsive force called as electrostatic repulsion or electrostatic stabilization. The two particles are separated here because of the surface charges. They overcome the van der Waals force of attraction, that is called electrostatic stabilization. Here potential energy curve is there. This top is the attractive force, repulsive force, that VR it should be supposed to be, and the bottom is the attractive force. When there is attraction, there will be agglomeration. When there is a repulsion, there is a separation of the particles. So we try to understand this repulsion force between the particles. Next, there are two more repulsive forces or repulsion method can be obtained between the two particles. And next one is by polymer adsorption. We can add a polymer to the particles such that the polymer get adsorbed on the particles. These particles are adsorbed, polymers are adsorbed like a long chains. So this one long chains of one particle will hinder or give a steric hindrance of the other particle coming close to this one. So this will give a repulsion, or there is no charge but separation of the two particles. This will hinder the particle coming close together and making the agglomeration because of the van der Waals force. So this type of repulsion attained by adding a polymer adsorbed on the particle surface is called steric hindrance or steric separation, or stabilization is called steric stabilization. If there is no stabilization, then bridging flocculation takes place, because two polymer molecules, if joins adheres to two powders, then that will get bridged. Then again that leads to a agglomeration or flocculation of the particles. Next, go one step further. If we have a polymer adhere to the particles, but this also has a charge at the end. Like it is called polyelectrolyte. Ammonium polyacrylate is one example. Ammonium salt of polyacrylate or polymethacrylate. That gives ammonium ions in the solution will be separate and COO negative. So that is adsorbed on the particle surface, alumina or silica, ceramic particle. The polymer adsorbed on that. Here it is a negative charge. So we get double effect here. One is the polymer repulsion because of its mass, steric repulsion, and charge repulsion, electrostatic repulsion, as what we obtained with the pH, charged surface. Surface also may be charged, but here polymer charge. So we have a double effect, steric and static. So it is called electrosteric repulsion. This type of repulsion between the particles, electrosteric repulsion, or it is called electrosteric stabilization. Here also the bridging may take place if the charges are not, if the two particles are differently charged, it will have same polymer will adsorb on the one material and another particle, then flocculation takes place. So we have to study the chemistry of the particle surface, type of additives that polymer, it is called dispersant or stabilizing agent. We have to study that and come to some conclusion what condition we have to use to get a good stabilization. Next slide please. So we have four type of forces acting on the surface of the particles or between the fine particles dispersed into a medium, through which we can get a stabilized suspension, or we can control the dispersion. This is called colloidal stability or colloidal dispersion stability of the fine ceramic particles in the liquid medium. One is the attractive van der Waals force, electrostatic repulsion, steric repulsion, electrosteric repulsion. This methodology or principle is also used in emulsions or pharmaceutical emulsions. They use some of the method like this, or sometimes that may not be charged, only polymer dispersions. And in paints, in so many industries, whenever emulsions and suspensions are handling, this technique they are using. In ceramic shaping techniques like slip casting, we use this methodology. Next. So our work is to manipulate and control the interparticle forces in powder suspensions to remove heterogeneity and optimize the suspension properties. We want a best dispersed condition as this one. So it can be obtained by repulsion by electrostatic, steric and electrosteric forces to overcome the van der Waals force of attraction. To overcome the van der Waals force of attraction, these four techniques can be used or combined together, we get the best dispersion, the first one. Flocculation partially or fully, it is not acceptable. Next. So I mentioned about zeta potential. We can measure the zeta potential or calculate, and then from the zeta potential we can estimate whether the particles will agglomerate or will disperse. Other techniques are sedimentation and rheology. If the time permits, I will go through that. Otherwise, I will skip. Zeta potential I will leave. Next. So I mentioned that there is a potential difference between the absorbed layer and remaining part of the liquid medium. This surface charge, higher the surface charge, higher is the potential, lower the charge, lower is the potential. It can be negative or it can be positive. If the surface is charged negative, potential is negative. If the surface is positive, it is positive. So if we measure the zeta potential as a function of pH of the medium, if you take alumina disposed in liquid medium water at pH 2, pH 3, pH 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 separate, each measure the zeta potential, then draw a graph versus pH, we will get this is a representative graph passing from positive to negative. So in the acidic medium generally they are positive, in alkaline medium it may be positive, but it is not at pH 7, it is neutral. Depending upon the characteristic of the material, that point may shift towards acidic or alkaline range. This point where zeta potential is 0 is called isoelectric point. Zeta potential is 0 where number of positive charges is equal to number of negative charges is called isoelectric point. Alkaline medium, generally alkaline medium negative, acidic medium positive, but depending upon the surface characteristic of the powder, this will vary. Sometimes it will be around 6 to 8 zeta potential for some materials. For some materials it will be completely mostly in the positive region or negative region as it is. So we have to modify the surface, we have to add another alkali electrolyte to modify the surface charge so that we can make it fully negative. In the next slide I think I have. So for our zeta potential, when the zeta potential is 0, it crosses through, the line passes through the 0 line is called the isoelectric point. Number of positive charges equal to number of negative charges. And for practical purposes, what should be the zeta potential? It should be either plus 30 or minus 30, or it should be more than that. Then only we can get a best dispersion or controllable dispersion. Otherwise it will get agglomerated. Next. Okay, slip. How to measure that zeta potential? I will skip that. Skip this. Zeta potential, here I have drawn the graph for aluminum oxide, that's alumina. In DI water, see you have asked the question, DI water only pH adjustment you get this first graph, top one. So it passes through the 0 region around pH 7.8. So 7.8 is the isoelectric point. But if we add a dispersant polyelectrolyte, ammonium polyacrylate, that will adhere on the surface, that will increase the negative charge, so that the surface becomes more negative. So zeta potential is more negative in the wider pH range. Even though pH adjusted to 6 or 5 like that, the zeta potential is negative because the particles are still negatively charged. So we measure this zeta potential for particularly this alumina, and zeta potential should be either more than minus 30. Here it is 50, 40, 50 range. So this is the condition, best condition to optimize, because there the particles are well dispersed. Next slide. Okay, when the particles are well dispersed, how much time I can? Another 10 minutes. Okay. I will skip this. Here, the thing is, the particles will settle under the force of gravity. If you put some particles into liquid medium, they will settle. I told agglomeration. When the 5 or 6 particles together, they will heavy mass. They will settle under the force of gravity faster, because that is governed by a law called Stokes' law that is there in the previous slide. Basic principle. So here, if the particles are separated, individual fine particles, they will take longer time to settle. We want for our application the particles should be under suspension for longer time. So when we control the surface charge, they will repel each other, they will be under suspension for longer time. Sedimentation, the settling rate, settling phenomena of the particles, if we measure, if the settling rate is faster, then it indicates that the particles are bigger or particles are agglomerated. If the settling rate is slower, the particles are dispersed, well dispersed. How we can measure? We see in the course of time, in the first slide, the particles are under suspension, they are not settling. In the second slide, they are settled. In the Third slide, bigger particles, agglomerates are settled, but still some fine particles are under suspension. So we want this third condition mostly we use because whenever we use, we have some bigger particles. There, this colloidal chemistry, the surface phenomena will not come into effect. That will settle little faster, but fine particles at least will be under suspension. Second condition, where fine particles, big particles, everything gets agglomerated, it settles. So this, if the charge is higher, this dispersed state will get, if the charge is low, they will get settled or agglomerated and settled. Next slide. We measure here the test tubes we used to measure at pH different conditions of alumina. See, first 3 slides, test tubes, everything is settled in a particular time interval. In the third one, fourth one, partially settled. Fifth, sixth, it is well dispersed. And the same time, maybe around 24 hours. After 24 hours of putting into a test tube, it is not settled. That means that condition is best, the particles are not agglomerated. If you measure the height and draw a graph here, you get the graph like this. Higher the sedimentation height is the agglomeration, high agglomeration. Lower the sedimentation height, better dispersion. Next. Then another is the viscosity. When we put the particles into a liquid medium, we make a slurry like dosa dough or idli dough. Idli, yaudu high viscous. Which one is high viscous? Which one is low viscous? Dosa ita, idli ita. Simple question. Yaudu high viscosity? Idli itu. Dosa itu. Like thicker. Thicker. Terminology, conventional terminology, thick and thin. See, at the bottom I have put thicker the sample, more resistance to flow. Why it is thick? It is viscosity is nothing but the resistance to flow. The definition is viscosity shear stress by shear rate. Shear stress is the pushing force. Shear rate, the rate of change of dimension or the strain, rate of change of strain. Strain is the deformation. The rate of change of deformation is the strain. Shear rate is the rate of change of deformation. Change of deformation with respect to time. So shear stress by shear rate gives the viscosity. Or in general, higher the viscosity, thicker is the material. Lower the viscosity, thinner is the material. Why I talk about this one? When the particles are, next slide. Next slide. When the particles are highly agglomerated, what happens is 5-6 particles will agglomerate, but there will be gap inside that. Some of the water is there embedded inside that agglomeration. So total, the amount of water available, liquid available for the flow is less, apparently decreased. So the viscosity increases. The flow is slow, thicker the material. Agglomerated the particle, viscosity is high, thicker the material. Because water is entrapped between the agglomerates. Less water is available for the flow. Water is solvent, it is for the flow. When the particles are well dispersed, all the particles are dispersed, entire volume of water or the liquid is available for the flow is easy. Of course, other parameters are there. Now I am only agglomeration, non-agglomeration I am talking about. When the agglomerate, same condition, if you put 50 grams in 50 ml of water, completely agglomerated and another is well dispersed. Well dispersed will have a low viscosity, agglomerated will have a high viscosity. Here we measure the viscosity. You might have viscometer, some, what is that method called? Oswald viscometer. You use it in GSM, right? For the liquid materials. But for these suspensions, we can't use that type of this one because high viscous abrading settling particles, we use rotational viscometers like this. There will be a cylinder, inside that we put the slurry and one more cylinder will go inside and it will rotate. It will rotate. The torque developed by the material or the resistance developed by the material for the rotation of the cylinder is measured in terms of the torque and that will convert into shear stress. And shear rate, the rotational speed is converted into shear rate. The viscosity is measured, the ratio between shear stress by rate is the viscosity. So, some of the equipment fully automatic, some of the partially automatic. We get the readings here. This is the partially controlled. What is that? We get the readings of viscosity, shear stress, etc. We draw a graph across pH versus viscosity. The alumina, I told, at pH 7, 8.8 or 8, high sedimentation also and low zeta potential because it is near zero, which gives high viscosity here. So viscosity is one of the methods to measure the flow of the material or the dispersion. Best agglomeration of the fine particles, higher is the viscosity, dispersion of the particle, lower is the viscosity. Next, here I combine three graphs, what I already explained: zeta potential, viscosity, sedimentation. Around pH 7.5 to 8, zeta potential, if you see here, zeta potential is near zero, that is surface charge is minimum, van der Waals force of attraction is more, attraction will be there, we expect that agglomeration takes place. Agglomeration takes place, viscosity will be higher, that's shown here, proved here. Then sedimentation takes place because of the bigger mass, settled faster, sedimentation height will be more, that is shown here. So if these three graphs are correlated each other, and at pH 7, 8, 9, the dispersion is poor, agglomeration is more. Similarly, at pH 10 and at pH 3, 4, the sedimentation height is low, viscosity is minimum, zeta potential is reasonably high. Here, first graph, 40. The first graph of here and first graph here, first graph here. Of course, two different conditions are there. So like this, we try to understand the dispersion, next slide, dispersion behavior of the particles. I would like to cover this, you have to extend me maybe 5 minutes. This, I'm sorry, I am affecting the next lecture. I talked about dry pressing, conventional. Now one of the reasonably latest technique, you might have heard about rapid prototyping technique, or recently 3D printer, that is well known now in the papers. ಪ್ರಜಾವಾಣಿ ಪೇಪರ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಈಗ ಒಂದು 6 ತಿಂಗಳಿಂದ 3 ಸಲ ಲೇಖನ ಬಂದಿದೆ, ಒಂದು ಅರ್ಧ ರೋಬೋಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಬಿಲ್ಡಿಂಗ್ ದ ಹೌಸ್ ಲೈಕ್ ದಟ್, ಯಂತ್ರಮಾನವ ಅಂತ ಟೈಟಲ್ ಬಂದು, ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ಈಗ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಟೆನ್ಷನ್. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ವಾಟ್ ಇಸ್ ದ ಡಿಫರೆನ್ಸ್ ಹಿಯರ್ ಇಸ್ ದಟ್ what is the difference between other techniques is that all the techniques to make any shape we require a mold. Negative idre positive bರುತ್ತೆ, negative ಗೆ material ಹಾಕಿದ್ರೆ positive ಬರುತ್ತೆ. But here in ನಿಮಗೆ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗುವಾಗೆ ಏನಂದ್ರೆ without the mold we just build like you are building the house, you are keeping the bricks layer by layer and building the wall, and two walls, then put one support, then put the terrace, you build. In fact, this is additive manufacturing, so we call it as additive manufacturing. So this principle we can compare to the building in our olden days, building the clay walls, etc. But for our complicated shapes, complicated products, faster, for making any component we have to make a negative first mold, master die with the steel or metal. We make a product, one piece we make, but see that some defect or some size is not, it is square, we have to make it a square, thick is more, or some angle, sharp angle. Again you have to make one more die, that takes time. Making the negative itself will take a time consuming, but that is a traditionally followed technique. But this methodology around 2003, 2004, 2005, 6 has been, people are talking about rapid prototyping. Whatever you think you can make when the CAD, computer aided designing has come, we can design a shape in the computer, and if the data is transmitted to a machine, computer controlled XYZ deposition, 3-dimensional deposition machine, then that can deposit a material of our choice in the as per the design given by the computer. You can build the block, and there is a lot of this itself separate one for mechanical engineering people. I try to talk about this one, give a lecture on additive manufacturing, particularly to ceramics. Again, for metals, for polymers, different techniques, etc. is there. Now we adopted one of the ceramic technique for this one. We call it as robo casting or moldless slurry casting. It is extension of slip casting. Similar slip we make. Here also surface charge, etc. we control, but we convert a ceramic flowing slurry into a thick paste, like something like toothpaste, which has a shear thinning behavior. Viscosity such that shear thinning, when you force it will come out, but when you stop pressing the container, it will stop coming out. and the shape of on the brush, if you put the paste, it will retain like that, because it has that much strength, that is called yield strength. Brush ಗೆ ಹಾಕಿದಾಗ ಹಾಗೆ ನಿಲ್ಲುತ್ತಲ್ಲ, ಅದು ಯಾಕೆ ನಿಲ್ಲುತ್ತೆ? That is the science behind it. It's a shear thinning behavior with the yield stress. That slide I skipped off. Shear thinning, dilatant, etc. That I moved it. So it is a shear thinning. Andre when you force it, apply a force, it will flow. When remove the force, it will not flow. It will stop flowing. That phenomena is made use of again by charge control, surface charge control, and that type of paste we prepare with alumina, silica, zirconia, and we put into a container and extrude. Apply a pressure, it will come out like noodles or shavige. Shavige ಮಾಡಿದಂಗೆ, ಚಕ್ಕುಲಿ ಮಾಡಿದಂಗೆ actually. Apply it, it will come out like a noodle. But here, then that XY, the machine will move, the nozzle will move in XY direction and deposit one cylinder or one rectangle. Then move in that direction, deposit one more layer. Move in another direction. That is and this is simple, just building the wall. In principle, we must be able to do any complicated, whatever you think by CAD design, it should be able to make. But we are not able to make it, it is not easy. A lot of other problems are there, techniques are there, limited to some materials, some methods. So here we just like a introduction I talked about, because to understand what it is. So it is we call it as additive manufacturing. Now recently the terminology people call it as additive manufacturing, involving computer aided designing and layer by layer building through computer controlled devices. So whatever concept you make in a computer can be made into a reality. This structure, like it is called a scaffold or skeleton structure. This is made by us with calcium phosphate and alumina materials we make. So we call it as globally it is called robo-casting, this particular method, and we call it as moldless casting or moldless slurry. Moldless manufacturing of three-dimensional components by computer controlled deposition of highly solid loaded slurry through an orifice or nozzle in sequential layers. Next slide. Okay, the process I will not explain. This is the internet picture in USA. They adopted this method, like this it occurs. The previous one, our own machine. Next I will show our own machine and technique also. So make the powder with the dispersant and then make a thick paste, then extrude through fine nozzle and deposit. This is the flow chart. Next. Here control of the surface charge, again surface modification, pH electrolyte, interparticle repulsion, etc. etc. Here also it plays actually from well dispersion first we make, then again we make it to agglomerate partially, so that viscosity suddenly increases. I told when it is well dispersed, viscosity is minimum. We keep on adding powder and make it a thick, as much as thick flowing slurry, but again change the pH or add some ionic compound so that it will agglomerate. Then what happens? Suddenly viscosity increases, but because of the water, already sufficient water is there, it will have a shear thinning behavior. That phenomena, the flow diagram is shown, phase diagram we can call, shown here. Next. So this is the latest machine. We had directly machines are not available, particularly to ceramics, and for plastics some machines were available. It will be 1 crore, above 1 crore that time. Now for plastics 3D printing equipments are available for 50,000, 1 lakh, 2 lakh, various versions. Very low lab tabletop, 50,000 rupees, 30, 40,000 also available in Chennai, one company, and China has come and made some equipments, but not for ceramics. So we are adopting some other equipments where the dispensing equipments, it's called 3D dispensing machines, to dispense the material. This is very simple. You may feel very, what is this, but funny. But initially to make this one struggling, and we are made with the alumina established. Next slide. These are the shapes made with alumina, zirconia, calcium phosphate, and there are various applications of this type of structures. Metal filtering, some application is there for zirconia and silicon carbide we have to make, and I found for biomedical application, tissue engineering applications, this type of structures are required. It is called scaffold with the porous structure, channeled porous structure. Next slide. Here, tissue engineering, one slide I will explain. Earlier days, the implant, now also there implant, the fracture is there, they put the implant, steel, titanium, but after some 6 to 8 years, 10 years, he has to get operated. because it will not, the physiological environment will not match. The young age, 16 years boy, if he undergoes an accident, if a steel rod is put, then after 10 years he will grow, that will not match inside. Just undergo one more surgery, another surgery, in lifetime 3-4 surgeries, other problems. Of course, still that is established technique. This technique still not come to the reality, not fully. Trying in abroad, India, little work is going on. So the concept is, if you put a material inside something, fill that gap. If this becomes part of the body after 1 or 2 years or slowly, 6 months, 1 year slowly, then there is no further surgery is required. That is tissue engineering, one way, bone tissue engineering. Or you replace permanently the affected or defected part of the body or organs. Tissue engineering is the in vitro. In vitro means in the lab, outside the body. Whatever we do inside the body testing, that is called in vivo, vivo. Or in vitro, outside the lab, outside the body, in the lab. Development or growth of tissues or organs to replace or restore the functions of defective or injured parts in vivo. That is the concept. And here the principle is, we require a porous structure, porous structure schematic with all holes, that is made of a biomaterial and which should undergo decomposition inside the body after some time. Such material has to be used, and that has to be filled with cells, live cells and growth factors, proteins, which will enhance the growth of that cells. That means in vitro, in the lab, they will engineer the cells. The cell will grow, and finally cell has grown or differentiate means multiply. Cells multiplied and it is filled with sufficient amount of cells, and that is implanted in the structure here, the broken part, and there slowly this scaffold, this first part is the material, or what ceramists or material scientists may be interested in this, has to work on these materials and making this structure, how to make. Then biologists, biotechnologists, they have to put the cell in by help of surgeons has to put it. And engineering concept is there, mechanical engineering, the structure should have a strength also. And this scaffold will resorbed, means dissolved with time in the body structure, replaced with the host tissue, natural tissues, and provide long-lasting repair. This is the, I am also not a biotechnologist or something. I am working on materials with some chemistry background. So what I understand, so this is the basic principle of tissue engineering. Outside the body, have a structure, put cells, grow it, put inside the body, and make it permanent solution. That's tissue engineering. Next slide. So here the requirement as a material scientist, one is the material should be compatible with the body. It should not create any toxic effect, or it should create an environment such that it is favoring the growth of the tissues, also the nucleation of the new tissues, and finally it becomes part of the body. And this becomes slowly dissolve. That's called resorbing inside the body. And here the different types of pores in the structure here in the below, you can find round big holes and schematic. Some of the schematic structures, channeled, continuous channeled pores like this. Window. If you put the windows cross, build a structure. That is scaffold structure. The channeled 10 micron pores, 1 micron to 10 micron, up to 100 microns, above 100 microns. These are all types of porosity, different percentages, different architecture. Finally, the architecture one has to study. It's very important for the growth of the better growth of the cells. There are methods to make these micropores of round-shaped pores or little unoriented, differently oriented pores. But continuously in one direction oriented pores can be made by this robocasting or moldless casting method. 3D dimension I have shown you in the previous slide. That's why we try to adopt that method to make the scaffold structure. Next. This is the result of, at present, what we have done. Luckily we have a project now from 2013 to 17. 17 is the deadline. Our work is to make such scaffolds and give to another laboratory. They will do some more studies and they will give to another lab in Calcutta both. They will do cell culture study in this in vitro. That is over now. Part of the study is over. They proved that material is proven already, hydroxyapatite. But the material what we use is, one is our own, what we synthesize in our laboratory, or what CGCRA people synthesize by another route and give us. And make this structure is my part or my group responsibility to make this type of structure, because we have developed that technique, and this is some of them has given to them. The animal study they have to do in a rat or something like that. They are going to study in the next 6 months maybe. Human studies may not go within short time. I don't know. It has to go for the final. So this some of the characteristics of this structure what we made: filament width, etc., channel, what is the size, and what is the density, microstructure, how it looks, etc. Next. Yeah, that I like to stop there, because that is the latest work what we are doing. And coming to the conclusion of yesterday and today, both slides I put here. It is known, you have to see how ceramics are useful and how it can be made. Ceramic materials find applications in variety of hostile environment, in critical environments. It may be an engine environment, high temperature, corrosive environment, we call it hostile environment, or like in a body, a biological condition. But ceramic materials, some of the ceramic materials will go for biological applications, some may be for high temperature applications, some may go for electronic applications. So wide variety of conventional and novel methods are under practice for the synthesis of high purity ultrafine ceramic powder. Some of the synthetic methods we have tried to see, understand the basic principles and a little bit about that. Then understanding the chemistry involved in these methods is very crucial. So a chemist background, good background, understanding the crystal structure, its dissolution, solubility, and other parameters. Theoretically, if you are well strong enough, you can do very good work in material synthesis area using various these methods, other methods, sol gel methods, etc. A sol gel method is more chemistry oriented. And so understanding the chemistry along with you, I try to stress that chemistry, not alone chemistry will not do, but chemistry is the fundamental to do any research, to make a developed material. Then the characterization, particle size, X-ray, function group, crystal structure,